Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our pre-debate interviews for tonight's Munk Debate on progress. I'm joined by Alain de Botton, the author, philosopher, and part of the team with Malcolm Gladwell, who will be arguing against tonight's resolution, be it resolved, humankind's best days lie ahead. Alain, great to have you in Toronto.
Thank you so much.
So give us a taste for how you're going to approach this debate tonight. I would think you may have a concern that the social consensus out there could be on Steven Pinker and Matt Ridley's side, just in terms of how people think about the future and what it holds in store.
Look, we do live in a world which has got two very powerful, optimistic drivers behind it. The first is business. We're in a commercial society, and if you want to sell anyone anything, you've got to sound cheerful about yourself and your future and your prospects. So there's a kind of cheerful atmosphere out there. And the other force for positivity in the world is science, which dazzles us, bedazzles us, and constantly promises us enormous changes. Despite these two very powerful forces, what I want to argue is that the obstacles to fulfillment and to a properly happy life, if you like, are stubborn and, if you like, cyclical. When people think about what's wrong with the world and what can we do with it, they cite things like education. We don't know enough. If only we get the education system right, then things will be okay. Then people say, well, if only we get the economy growing, if we end poverty, then things will be okay. And then sometimes people say, if we end war and conflict, then things will be okay. And there's a lot of hope also around medicine. If we manage to get medical advances to a certain stage, we will end a lot of suffering. My problem has always been that I'm Swiss. And when you come from Switzerland, you come from a country that has solved all those problems as best as humankind can. Switzerland is maybe 500 years ahead in development of a place like Uganda or Liberia. And the bad news, guys, is that there's a lot of problems still in Switzerland. And I'm interested in what you might call first world problems. That's normally seen as a pejorative, kind of an insult, like they don't really exist. But they do exist. They have a striking ability to mar existence. And so a lot of my focus tonight is going to be talking about what these first world problems are and how stubborn they are and how much they impede some of our grander visions of making life on Earth perfect.
Well, great. Give us an example, too, of a first world problem that you think, isn't just, the result of being at the top of the pyramid, but is actually something serious, substantive that our lives should consider.
Well, one of the tragedies really of economic development is that though we thought that all you need to do to bring happiness to people is to increase their material conditions, it's been an major insight of economics for the last 40 years, ever since an economist called Easterlin did a famous study of the relationship between income and happiness. If you lift all boats, the desire for more and envy and a sense of status anxiety continues, even though a society is, by all accounts, extremely rich. So you don't merely end financial dissatisfaction by enriching a people. There's something endemic in us that is comparative, there's looking over our shoulders, and envy and jealousy and a sense of inadequacy exists among billionaires. Mm-hmm. So that's pause for thought. So that's just one example of a promise which, even if we made the whole world into billionaires, there would be economic quirks and unhappinesses and griefs. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. Of course we should try and do it. But don't expect that everything will be perfect simply because everyone enjoys the income level of, say, a Swiss dentist, which may happen on the planet in 500 years.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us a little bit about what you're going to hear from your opponents tonight, which will probably be quite data-driven, that they're going to look at, as you've mentioned some of the things, the eradication of diseases, the reduction in acute poverty throughout the developing world, the extent to which life expectancy generally across the globe has risen. If you look at a data frame, and it is just a frame of the last 100 years or so, those lines look quite impressive and quite moving up the chart nicely. How do you respond to that
Well,
argument?
what our optimistic friends are missing is just how perverse the human mind is. And so, of course, no one will want to deny the upward curve that these nice folks are pointing to. But we have to bear in mind such things as the ability to increase educational standards and to massively increase the knowledge that people have at their fingertips, and yet the persistence of idiocy and ignorance despite education. It's been the great dream of the Enlightenment. If only you can educate people, people will give up prejudice, rotten ideas, bad impulses. These things will melt away like fog on a sunny day under the light of reason. It doesn't happen. And we've seen conflict after conflict in educated populations. So education is not a panacea. Similarly with medicine, for all the advances in medicine, there's one thing that's staring all of us in the face, which is our own extinction. We are each of us facing our own miniature Armageddon, our own apocalypse. Of course, it's great to have advances in cardiac knowledge, in cancer treatments, etc. Wonderful. But we haven't and won't ever resolve these issues. I'm an optimist for a species which is not Homo sapiens. I believe that it is possible that in maybe 1,000 years' time, we will create a species which doesn't die, which is properly able to use knowledge, which is happy, which is inherently non-aggressive. It won't be Homo sapiens. It'll be another species. So one of the things I'll be saying tonight is that I could be optimistic, but just not on behalf of humanity. There's Homo better designed ends that might be coming some point in 500 years. It's not us.
Yes. It seems part of your argument is about the qualitative as opposed to the quantitative, and the extent to which in the modern world we are obsessed with the quantitative, the just pure empirical measurement of ourselves against others, of our society as opposed to other nations, whereas you think the qualitative dimension of our lives, our inner selves, is still a field of poverty in a way.
Lots of things slip through the net of statistics. The classic thing is around expectations, that you cannot simply give a measure, a line saying above this line of health, of income, of social networks, etc., people will be content, because so much has got to do with this tricky internal feature called expectations. One of the things to bear in mind is that expecting that the world won't improve does not mean that you are a cheerless, depressive soul. Indeed, what I want to recommend to the audience is that the capacity to stare the grim facts of existence properly in the face, in fact, endows one with a certain buoyancy and capacity to deal with problems, and that part of the brittleness and embitterment of the modern world has got to do with expectations which weren't met, a sense of entitlement which was betrayed. And here it's very wise to take a leaf from the ancient Stoics, who very much recommend a philosophical, as we put it, approach to life, where you expect that a lot of things may go wrong, but that you can survive them, and if you don't, your end may be quick. And this sounds like a very alien philosophy, particularly in North America. But I think it's the best hope we have, and I don't think that people who are pessimistic have necessarily given up on human progress. One can be a great believer in human advances while keeping the dark facts very much in view. So I want to rescue the anti-progress group from a kind of vision of darkness and depression. We're not depressive. We're cheerful realists.
Right. What do you make of the fact that as humans we've been obsessed with progress now for almost 2 millennia? That we've had a Christian theory of progress. We had theories in the 20th century built around history and how there were certain internal dynamics of history. Tonight, no doubt, from Matt Ridley, we're going to hear a story about how now evolution, social evolution, is the new springboard for progress. What does this mean? Why have we been so obsessed with this idea for so long?
Well, right, you put your finger on something very important in mentioning religion, connecting that up to science, because of course what science is a secularized version of the Christian narrative of the perfection of humanity. And this has been something that has haunted the Western imagination for, since the year dot, as you say. We can imagine perfection. It's something to do with the fact that we have very powerful tools of imagination. And it isn't hard for us to simply subtract everything that's negative from our own characters and our own societies and imagine heaven on earth, the New Jerusalem. And what our scientific friends often talk about, though they don't talk in that language, is a scientific or scientified version of the New Jerusalem. And I think it's a beautiful dream, and to have these ideals is a very important part of keeping going, because they provide a roadmap, a sense of direction. We're pointing towards the New Jerusalem. We'll never get there because human beings are endowed with a brain which I like to refer to as the faulty walnut. We have faulty walnuts at the top of our spinal columns. And these faulty walnuts misfire, they're aggressive, they don't remember what they should, they're endowed with all sorts of very unhelpful drives. We've tried to create civilization which should correct some of the worst impulses of the faulty walnut, and we have. That is what civilization is. It corrects some of the worst aggression, some of the worst selfishness, some of the worst short-termism, etc. That's what civilization is. It's a kind of superior brain that looks after the little brains that are all flawed. But even so, we won't entirely eradicate the inbuilt flaws. And the current dream is artificial intelligence, that we will make a perfect human being, the perfect machine-made human. I happen to be very interested in the possibilities of artificial intelligence, but as I say, at that point, at the point of the most advanced kind of artificial intelligence, we actually leave Homo sapiens behind. So it may happen, but it won't be the human race that will have got there. We will become something else and someone else.
Wow. Alain de Botton, thank you for coming to Toronto. Fascinating argument. We look forward to the full show tonight on the main stage.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.